Damage to homes and infrastructure due to severe weather in KwaZulu-Natal has highlighted the need to design more resilient cities. Some houses were constructed on the beachfronts, on sandy soil and even flood-prone areas. Multi-million rand properties, roads as well as telecommunications and electricity infrastructure suffered damage. Joining us now to discuss how better town planning can help mitigate against the impact of natural disasters is UKZN Professor Hangwelani Magidimisha-Chipungu, back with us tonight on In Focus. Professor Hope, good to have you with us once again tonight here on In Focus. Now, again, I mean, the latest floods revealing the vulnerability of particular areas when it comes to infrastructure in KwaZulu-Natal. Do we have the data of these vulnerable areas, and can we use that data particularly to help us going forward in where to build?
Well, thank you very much for the question. I think when it comes to data, municipalities have done a sterling job in terms of collecting data in terms of areas which are vulnerable. So they've got a data which shows you soil which is stable or not stable, areas which are not recommended for development. And that is okay, and it's really a good work they've done. But I think what is even important right now is to move from a diagnostic planning to more action-oriented planning. The question we have to start asking ourselves is that with this data, what is next? Of course, getting this data is the first step towards trying to find the solutions. But now we need to move with great speed to say, what do we do with those people who are living in vulnerable areas already? How are we going to remove them? What is the relocation strategies if we have to relocate them? What are the resources? Where are the resources? Who are the stakeholders? And who's supposed to be part of all this? I think in terms of the data is available. But the question is, what do we do with that data? And interesting to notice that this data has been available for quite some time within the space. And the question is, so how do we make use of that? And that is the question that, as the KZN, we need to start asking ourselves those type of questions to say, the data available, how do we use it to solve the problem? Because you need data, reliable data, to be able to bring on board a working and sustainable solution.
Which data, I mean, for example, is used in town planning?
Yeah, so the data that the city has, and it's coming in different forms. Some of the data that they have, obviously, they're using GIS and trying to overlay that with different data that they may have, also looking at the rain gauge and trying to overlay each other and tell us a proper picture of the areas which are vulnerable. That is the data I'm talking about. So it partially points you to a direction and a place and a ward which is more vulnerable. It does tell you how many people are staying there and how many people within that specific space are more vulnerable and to flooding, and we need to action on that. And that is powerful data. And now the question is, what are we going to do with that data? And this data has been available for some time. It's not like something which happened yesterday or so, but there has not been a proper use of that data. So what we are saying is that it will be important and really recommended that the data be brought forward to start assisting us to plan towards a sustainable development within our urban spaces. Yeah. Also, because in planning fraternity, if we are to come up with any development, we need that data. And the data is already there. So we know the areas where people who are staying there are vulnerable, and we know the population. We also know the income that obviously if we put certain type of development from a planning perspective, they won't be able to afford, because we know the average income of that particular environment. Yeah. But now the question is, what are we doing with that data?
Now, GIS, which is geographical information science, right? I think that's what it is, geographical information science. Why is that important in urban planning? For example, you know, we have cities that are ever evolving in as far as the complexity and where we build, type of houses that we build, and just the space that we begin to occupy. So how important is geographic information science that we gathered back in 2010 today?
No, it's very important because it's the data that you can update, right? It's not something that you can just leave it like that. So those are the shape files that with time and the resources you can update now and then. But once you detect that the piece of land is prone to flooding, and that is the case. Come 10 years down the line, the area is still going to be prone to flooding. So in as much as we need to update it and we need to work on some part of it to try to make sure that maybe we deal with the current rains as the gauging, or especially for the rains. But the data that you collected, especially to indicate where those informal settlement is important. But what you will need to update often is because we have a lot of mushroom of informal settlement within our urban spaces, is to able to track those which are coming up and see how we then able to use that data. And what is important is that you are also able to see the pieces of land within the space which actually is available for development, and also try to link that with the ownership, who owns that particular piece of land. And what is interesting in this discussion actually is that recently it was well documented in the media that the city has now released the land, even other public sectors such as public works. And the question is, why now, where this land has been, and does it have to take a life for us to be able to release that piece of land? So now we're hearing stories that there's pieces of land which has been released, which is good, and we're really excited about that. But the question is, why now? And what do we do then going forward with this to make sure that we prevent something like this going forward? I think we need to move from just being mitigating strategies, looking at the mitigation strategies, but looking at the adaptive planning, because it's quite obvious and clear that the issue around climate change are here to stay. So urban planners, myself and other people within the field, we need to acknowledge this into our planning, and with the correct data that we have, we're able to make some adjustment going forward.
Do you think, I mean, from the evidence that we are seeing now, and maybe in your own experience, we have been strictly adhering to optimizing new building placements as far as where we build houses or build buildings of particular important nature?
So I missed that?
I'm saying, do you think we have been prioritizing, optimizing building placement in as far as using the GIS information? So have we been looking at the GIS information and then making those decisions of where we're going to place particular buildings based on that? Have we been strictly adhering to that?
Yeah, in some instances, we have been using the tool, like as I said, GIS is a tool, to actually map some of those areas, and which we've done a stunning job, because it's basically about mapping what is on the ground. But what we have not done very well is to make use of that information and lead that into the practical solutions that are actually solving people's life. The data is there, is available, it's adjustable, it can be amended as and when necessary. But we have not done excellent work in terms of making sure that data, we take that into solutions. And this is unfortunate, because now we have the technology within our reach. Of course, it will be unfair to assume that every municipality within KZN, they do have that capacity in terms of the data, but the municipality such as Etikweni, which is big, obviously they do have the equipment and the resources and the manpower to pull those things. But the question is, the point is, we have not made use of that data to bring solutions into our urban spaces.
With, of course, climate change, global warming, and the likelihood of more of these adverse weather patterns emerging, do we need to go back and maybe review some of the information we have, particularly around the environmental impact?
Of course. In fact, we shouldn't wait for disasters like this, and even not waiting for the climate change to get worse, as it is going to get worse in the near future, and the climatologists will tell you exactly that, how bad it's going to get. So, but what we need to supposed to be doing is to also go back and check, and to make sure that our shape files are updated. They are still corresponding with what is on the ground. In most instances, you may find that the land which was zoned a couple of years back for open spaces because of floodplain, right now in the municipality shape files, or in the actually GIS itself, mapping itself, you realize that maybe it's showing something else. But when you go into specific pieces, parcels of land, you will realize that those parcels of land, actually, they're already occupied by people. They're informal settlement. We're talking about 550 on average of land parcels which are occupied with the informal settlement within our spaces. And this is about to get even worse, maybe in the next couple of years. But we need to be mapping those areas now and constantly and following up on those areas. But what is frustrating is that we're able to pick up some of those informal settlements into our maps, but we've not done much in terms of solving the problem. And now we've started talking about land which has been released in different sectors and different circles to assist, and it's just only coming up now. It's not like we didn't know that we have those pieces and parcels of land, but what has been the issue and challenge has not been well articulated. That's why we're talking about it now.